Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles have gone from a self-published indie comic to small-screen success to blockbuster movies on the silver screen, and all along the way have produced some incredible action figures, selling over $1 billion worth from 1988 to 92 alone. Let's take a look at some of the very best and explore the Ninja Turtles' crazy history along the way. Hey y'all, welcome back to Carbon Scoring, the best place for comics history and action figures. These are the only two surviving turtles from my childhood collection, dating back to the original action figures released by Playmates in 1988. They mashed up the muscle tone of He-Man figures with the undeniable fun of the original cartoon, creating an almost irresistible force, making the Turtles the third biggest selling toy line of all time, behind only Star Wars and G.I. Joe. Not bad for a couple of guys doodling on their coffee table in New Hampshire. Lucky for us, Super 7 replicated those original turtle figures in 7-inch form for their Ultimates line. Super 7 takes a bunch of heat for their Ultimates figures, mostly due to cost, and at $50 a pop, that's not unwarranted. But when you get these in hand, you can really see that they have made a premium quality update of those original Playmates figures. First off, they get the details right. Raph here has the original belt where he can place his size in the front, and he still has the holster in the back for his triangular blade, just like the original. In fact, each of the turtles is able to store their weapons on their persons, something that I truly love in an action figure. Speaking of weapons, they each have been updated with detailed paint and even metallic parts, but they all come with the classic brown weapons rack as well. And while I prefer the newer head sculpts, as I think they bring out the personality of each turtle, a replica of their original Playmate sculpts was included as well. And finally, something that I always harp on, the intersection of sculpt and articulation. Super 7 greatly increased the articulation and posability of these figures, but it's barely noticeable as each of the joints is well hidden in the sculpt, the overall effect creating an incredibly clean action figure. While it was the original toy line and cartoon that launched Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles into the stratosphere, it all started at Peter Laird's house, where he and Kevin Eastman cobbled together the money to print 3,000 copies of the maiden issue of Ninja Turtles. Our heroes all looked pretty similar in those original black and white comics, really only distinguished by their unique weapons. But that artwork was perfectly captured in this set of figures by NECA. This is the look that started it all, and while there were indie comics before the Turtles, Eastman and Laird blew the doors wide open for independent publishers to have mainstream success with their creations. NECA crushed it with these figures. They managed to capture the odd proportions of these early turtle drawings, the huge feet, the large hands, the elongated necks, and of course, that famous curvature of a snout on each of the turtles' faces. They even managed to get the tails right, which were way more prominent on these than on any other design. Each turtle was given a unique head sculpt with an individual expression, but they were mostly identical from the waist down. The nicely detailed weapons did a great job of combining the look of the comic art with some intricate paint apps. NECA figures from this period were known for their QC issues and fragility, so these are better for posing than playing, but as a set, man, did they look incredible together. I would love to say that I was an early adapter and was reading the Turtles back from the very beginning, but the first issue I picked up at my local comic shop was the Leonardo Micro Series in 1986, by which time the art had evolved significantly. With the Return to New York storyline running through issues 19 through 21, Jim Lawson's pencils further solidified the look of the Turtles, again, perfectly captured in action figure form from NECA. I have a long-standing theory, backed up by the comments section in every video I make, that your favorite version of a character is the first version you encountered. So for me, these really are my favorite turtle figures. There's just something about their boxy, more athletic proportions. Gone are the big feet and goofy necks. These are superheroes. NECA crushed the details on these, from the scratchy inking lines all over their bodies to the way the ties on their bandanas flow behind them. It's as if these stepped right off the comics page. These figures represent an era before the cartoon with its color-coded characters, so the uniformity of the red bandanas mixed with unique facial expressions really speaks to me. And to their credit, NECA has come a long way with their QC issues, so you can really bend and play with these guys like true action figures. You never truly forget your first love, and while we may decide that there are better turtle figures, these will probably remain my personal favorites. One of the greatest gifts of the Ninja Turtle franchise is the ability to reinvent itself for new generations. I experienced this firsthand when Nickelodeon's 2012 cartoon reimagining of the Turtles became a hit with my own children. So much so that we actually went and stayed at the Nick Hotel in Orlando for a chance to hang with our favorite heroes in a half shell. For that alone, the Playmates figures from this series will always have a special place in my collection. Our first figures from longtime Turtles license holder Playmates are another of my favorites, mainly because these are truly meant to be toys to be played with. You can see that they're smaller, more of a 5-inch scale, which fits better in tiny hands. And these things are super sturdy, ready for legitimate play. I particularly like how the plastic of their front shell is more of a rubbery piece to allow for better bend at the hips. This cartoon really brought out the unique personalities of each turtle, and the figures captured that, with Donnie being taller and leaner, while Raph is much more squat and muscular. Plus, I think this is the first instance of Raphael having a battle-damaged crack in his shell, another nod to his brawler personality, which we will see in later figures. Mikey is significantly shorter, leading to that kid brother type of feel, while Leo remains the ideally proportioned turtle, the center of everything. These figures were both affordable and accessible, easily found on store shelves, reminding me of something my old football coach used to say: the best ability is availability. And if you grew up playing with these guys, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Make no mistake, the Turtles have never been afraid to make a dollar, so the Nick designs were franchised out to the Japanese toy maker Kyoto for their super articulated Revoltech line of action figures. When you think of Revoltech, one word springs to mind: articulation. And these figures do not disappoint. They each have that 360-degree ball joint that Revoltech made famous. At the knees, hips, elbows, and shoulders, although the shoulder joint is kind of pushed forward, disrupting the look of the sculpt for me a little bit. The feet have this super cool range of motion that works great with the anime stylings of this version of our heroes. And each of the individual fingers is articulated. It's a real treat, and just not something that you see very often. Each figure came with numerous additional accessories, like these stylized backdrops, which really led to increased world building and matched the animated look. Speaking of animation, this Turtles cartoon leaned heavily into the classic anime exaggerated expressions, and an alternate head for each figure brought out a different, insane hyper emotion. But the coolest thing of all were the articulated bandanas. You see, by moving this back and forth, you could change the eyes on the figure from the exposed pupils to the all clear classic fighting style. It worked on each figure and totally changed the mood and expression of the character. It is just such a super cool effect. Enjoying this walk down memory lane? Subscribe to Carbon Scoring, because we're bringing you high quality videos like this every week. The Turtles have never been afraid of a good crossover, dating all the way back to 1986's issue 8, when they teamed up with another independent comic icon, Dave Sims's Cerebus. Then, Stan Sakai's Rabbit Ronin Usagi Yojimbo featured in the original toy line. And even today, the Turtles of Grayskull mashed the Motu and TMNT universes into the longest acronym ever. In 2019, the teens may have met their match against the Dark Knight in the direct-to-video animated movie Batman vs. the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which DC Collectibles gave us a very stylized set of turtles exclusive to GameStop stores. These figures were released as two packs, each one featuring one turtle and one member of the Bat family, so it took like a year and a half for the team to come together. The first turtle released was Leo, and I immediately loved the simplified animated look. I really dug the clean, angular lines. The minimalistic design combined with the exaggerated feet again brought a serious anime vibe. I really thought these could be the definitive turtle figures. Raph came next, and holy crap, this guy is a tank! Both taller and broader than Leo, Raphael just looks tough with his giant boxer's chin and furrowed squinty eyes. Plus, these sighs are super pointy. Donnie was where I started to lose interest. Like I said, these releases were really far apart, so it was hard for the line to have any momentum. And my guy Donatello here, he just looks kind of goofy. I don't have a problem with him being tall and lanky. That has really kind of become his thing. It's the pea head and the little circle eyes and the sad mouth expression. Seriously, this is like the least intimidating ninja ever. By the time Mikey hit, it seemed like the quality of the figures was slipping. Sure, the skinny arms and legs, accentuated by the oversized knee and elbow pads, gave him that little brother look that was becoming standard. But the paint on the bandana was so weak that you can see the green of his skin underneath. It looks like it needs a couple of more coats or something. I'm sad to say that it was a disappointing finish to what started out as a stellar line of figures. But I'm still keeping them, so don't ask how much I want for them in the comments. Hey, when it comes right down to it, I'm a comic guy. And when my kids got into the Turtles, I got back into IDW's TMNT book, which reunited Kevin Eastman with his co-creations. It has become the longest running Turtles comic and has featured some pretty great art, particularly by Mateus Santaluco, and I'm lucky enough to own some of his original pages from the series. Toymaker loyal subjects released figures from this run in their best action line. These were the first figures I picked up from the loyal subjects, and I have to admit, I'm pretty impressed. They clearly care about the source material and made every effort for the sculpt of these figures to reflect this. While they're 5 inches in scale, that doesn't prevent them from being packed with detail, from the sinewy musculature to the individual wrappings around their hands and feet. And if you're going to replicate the work of a specific comic artist in 3D, you've got to get the heads right. And these are instantly recognizable as being based off of Santaluco's art. This is a grim, gritty, grown-up Turtles book, far closer in tone to the original indie comics of the 80s than the candy-colored cartoons of the 90s. And one final detail. These figures clearly take place after the Vengeance story arc that finished in issue 50, a story where Rocksteady delivered a mortal wound to Donatello, crushing and destroying his shell, forcing him to have an artificial carapace, one which is faithfully reproduced on this figure, markedly different from his brother's natural shells. Premium detailing, comic accuracy, and a really reasonable price, there's a lot to love about the loyal subjects' best action versions of the Ninja Turtles. Again, more than perhaps any other pop culture property, TMNT is able to revamp and reboot for each new generation of fans, while still maintaining enough to keep the older fans engaged. This was once again on display with 2023 smash animated film Mutant Mayhem, and the toys produced from it. Okay, crazy idea, hear me out. Say you have a hit movie, and you make faithful toys that are fairly priced and readily available. Can't be done? I say Mutant Mayhem proves you wrong. No, these are not the most detailed figures ever produced, but they're spot-on replicas of what we saw on the screen. Now, they're certainly figures with more articulation, but hey, ball shoulders, ball hips, and I count 13 points of articulation of these, 9 of which are ball joints. They don't come with a ton of accessories, but their weapons store on their backs, and they fit perfectly in their hands. I mean, come on, just look at Donnie here, with his fanny pack with the phone sticking out and his glasses on. There is no way you can be holding this and not be smiling. As we're about to see, I love high-end collectible figures, but I love a good old-fashioned toy just as much. We have looked at 8 different versions of our heroes in a half shell, each slightly different, each with unique pluses and minuses. But is there one line that could pull all of these different aspects together? The Mezco 112 box set certainly tries to do just that. Far and away the most expensive figures on this list, these came in a giant box packed with a ton of accessories. So let's talk about some of the best aspects of the other sets of figures we have and see how the Mezco 112 set measures up. Certainly some of the best sculpting we saw came from the NECA figures, but as you can see, that same level of detail is evident here, with super fine sculpting applied, particularly to the shell. And while nothing can top the articulation of the Revoltech figures, these are no slouch, with sneaky ball joint at the ankles and some nice cut joints hidden by the sculpt. The joint of the neck is particularly nice, allowing for an extensive range of motion and tons of posing options. I've already mentioned the extensive accessories, which include multiple add-ons to the Turtles' primary weapons. But the bonus touches, such as the leather belts and straps, add a level of class and sophistication to these figures. If I had to place these in a particular Turtle era, I'd say they most fit with the 2012 Nick designs, partly because of the big feet and the colorful bandanas. But there's something about the grimy paint wash overlays that almost bring out a live action feel, kind of like the first in-theater Turtles movie. I do have one complaint. Each figure comes with 3 unique heads, which that's pretty awesome. But I would have preferred for one of those heads to have been painted with the classic comic red bandana, so that these could be displayed as a more accurate comic set. But who cares what I think? I want to know what y'all think. Did this set knock it out of the park as one of the best Turtle figure sets ever? Or are you new to the franchise and Mutant Mayhem is your go-to Turtles look? Or are you a crusty old 80s indie comics guy with a graying goatee and receding hairline pulled back into a ponytail who thinks the instant they added color to the book, it became a total sellout? No matter what, the one thing I can guarantee you is this. For the best in comics history and action figures, subscribe to Carbon Scoring.